Legend of the Sea Devils is the newest episode of the modern era of Doctor Who. It's an Easter special that followed directly off of the end of Eve of the Daleks. It took me a while to watch this episode because I don't have cable anymore. I kind of want to just focus on it for a little bit and just talk about it. Now, I watched this new episode and it continues the trend of being convoluted and just being really insanely difficult to follow. I'm just hoping that you won't pay enough attention to realize that the episode makes no sense. I've watched it twice. At least I tried to watch it twice. I watched it once, and then I started it again, and I was like, okay, how did this get here? How did that get there? And let me tell you, nothing got cleared up. I think there's just a lot of stuff that just doesn't make sense. So if you watch the episode and it didn't make sense, then I guess the episode just doesn't make sense. So there might be some things that are explained that I'm going to talk about as if they don't make any sense, and yet there is an explanation that somebody else found. But I just decided I could watch it 3-4 times in a row, but I they didn't put the effort in, I feel like, to make it make sense, so why should I? There's a short intro sequence which happens that it sort of sets up the plot line. I'll get back to that later because there's stuff in that I feel like I'll touch on later to explain how certain things happen. Our TARDIS lands in 1807, China. Basically, the TARDIS team is looking for an explanation as to why the famous Fleur de la Mar treasure disappeared. What happened to it? They basically decided they wanted to know that. It's a reference to like the previous episode where they directly say, I don't know whatever happened to that. And so here we are finding out what happened to that. We're thrust into the plot basically immediately. No explanation. It doesn't make much sense. So I'm going to probably say that a lot. There's a quick joke, which is kind of funny, about how Dan Lewis is basically dressed in like a very stereotypical pirate outfit. It's very gaudy, very over the top, very silly, not very time appropriate, but it's kind of a funny gag, I guess. And he's in this pirate outfit for the whole episode. But basically, what kicks off the plot is that the Doctor just randomly feels a tug on her earring, and determines that there must be some sort of weird geomagnetic disturbance happening, and so she skips a rock in the water, and it curves off real weird, and then she's like, yeah, that's a geomagnetic disturbance if I've ever seen one. Why does the rock veer away? I don't really understand that. I mean, the rock, it doesn't have metal really in it. I mean, does it? Maybe it does. I don't know. It's a rock, you don't really think of rocks being pulled by magnets. At least I don't. So I wouldn't think that would do anything. Additionally, the TARDIS apparently arrived 4 centuries off, as she said, which actually isn't right. I looked it up. We cut away straight to basically a small fishing village. Some stuff has just recently happened, which is where we'll cut back into what happened in the intro. Basically, you have this pirate queen. Her name is Madame Cheng. She is looking for the lost treasure of a guy called Ji Hun. He apparently had a treasure. She knows the ship went down. She was following some sort of map. And the map led her to this village. At this village, she found this statue. She seemed to know that there was something in this statue that contained information as to where Ji Hoon's treasure was. That's all we really get. We don't know how she knows this, but she does know that. She seems to know specifically that she's looking for this tiny little rock. Again, how she would know what that is doesn't really make any sense. So from here, I'm going to basically jump ahead to explain the villains' plot line here, what they were trying to achieve. So essentially, the villains of this episode are the Sea Devils. It's a long-standing Doctor Who enemy that has been around since the Pertwee era. They're basically cousins of the Silurians. If you're at all a fan of Doctor Who, the Silurians are basically these lizard folk that have existed on Earth longer than humans have. The Sea Devils they're an entirely aquatic race. They live in the water. The Silurians live underground, obviously, so that's sort of the difference there. But essentially, they're basically the same thing. Now, the Sea Devils' master plan, apparently, is that, and this is revealed at the end of the episode, they want to reverse the magnetic poles of the Earth so that chaos will happen on Earth, and the Earth will then be flooded entirely. Apparently, the polar ice caps will melt, and the whole Earth will be flooded, and they want to do this because they hate humans. And this plan makes sense to them. apparently the whole Earth will be flooded, and that makes sense, I guess. So in order to do this, they need this MacGuffin item called the Keystone. Apparently, whatever this Keystone is, it will do that thing. It will reverse the magnetic polarity of the Earth somehow. Don't really know how, but it will do that, I guess. So, if we go back to our pirate queen, Madame Cheng, what she finds in this statue is the Keystone. How does she know about this Keystone? How does she know what it does? Why does she think it's going to give her information as to where to find the Ji-hoon treasure when that's not something that it would do, even? How does she know it's in this statue? At some point in the past, Ji-hoon was working for the Sea Devils for some reason. They needed him, I think, and I'm extrapolating here, that they used him to find this Keystone, whatever it was, wherever it came from, and then they were going to betray him. He anticipated that they were going to betray him, and so he decided that he was going to give it to this other guy who jumped off the boat, and then this guy went to that fishing village, and apparently they remained there for like centuries, and his ancestors put this Keystone into a statue, and so she was going to find this statue with this Keystone because I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But she thinks it's going to lead her the treasure. It realistically isn't, but it was something that was owned by Ji-hoon. So I guess that makes sense. If you don't try to think about it too much, maybe it makes sense. But the thing that doesn't make sense is then why is the leader of the Sea Devil, the main villain of this episode, is sealed in that statue somehow. But the last we see of him in the past flashback, where he's with Ji-hoon, he betrays Ji-hoon, but we don't know how he ended up in that statue then. They have Ji-hoon in a stasis field for some reason, and they're keeping him underground with his ship because they explain that they have him here because they hate him so much, and this is torture for him to just be stuck in this stasis chamber, but they don't need him there. They just have him there to torture him, I guess. But then if Ji-hoon was captured, again, how did this guy end up in the statue? I don't know. Who put him in the statue? Why is he in the statue, like, right in the same statue where the Keystone is that he was looking for? He was stuck in that statue, and then when he escapes the statue, he doesn't even get the Keystone. He apparently somehow kills everybody in the village, but this kid who had the Keystone, who somehow had to take it from the Pirate Queen because she had the Keystone, and somehow he didn't find it there, and yet he went into the rest of the village and killed everybody, and left the Pirate Queen alive, and didn't find the Keystone that now this kid has. So at this critical moment, we're jumping back to where we started in the plot line. Basically, the doctor shows up and confronts Madame Cheng, and talks to her and is like, I'm sorry, this guy got killed by a Sea Devil sword. And then she finds the Sea Devil, and then the Sea Devil jumps away. It was very bad CGI, jumps away onto this ship that appears out of nowhere. She's like, why do they have a ship? They've never needed a ship. And as I said, it explains later that they have a ship because it's really scary. This ship specifically is Ji-hoon's ship that sank, and they kept it and renovated it for 4 centuries. Instead of looking for the Keystone, I guess because the leader wasn't around, and when the leader breaks out of the statue, it activates them, and they're like, all right, time to look for the Keystone again. I guess. Let's use our cool flying ghost ship that we made. From this point, the TARDIS team sort of breaks up. You have Dan Lewis basically go with that kid that has the Keystone sneak onto Madame Ching's ship for some reason, just for fun, I guess. And then the Doctor and Yaz go to the past, where they know the ship sank. The TARDIS spawns directly on the ship, and they see that Ji-hoon was there, and he's ordering all of his men to jump off the ship. And then they see the Sea Devil appear and basically talk to him and be like, I'm going to betray you. So at this point, there's another thing that really doesn't make any sense, where the Doctor's like, well, now at least we have the information that we know where the ship sank, so we'll be ahead of Madame Ching because she doesn't know exactly where the ship sank, but we do. But the thing is, like, how did she not already, like, she didn't need to go to this boat in the past to know where the ship sank, right? Because then why did she know where the ship was in the past and perfectly pilot the TARDIS on the ship if she didn't know where it was and where it sank? How does she now have that information when she didn't before? Like, how does it make sense that the TARDIS landed on the ship perfectly and then yet she didn't know where it sank? It doesn't make sense. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. Now we're going to jump to a small character plotline that was started. I'm going to say it was started in Eve of the Daleks because it was. It's something that I think they're pretending was built up for the last few seasons, when in reality it came out of nowhere. At the end of Eve of the Daleks, basically there's this side plot where Dan Lewis is talking to both Yaz and the Doctor individually and seems to know for sure that they're really into each other, which, I mean, to me, watching this came completely out of nowhere. I mean, Yaz was really poorly written in the first 2 seasons of her appearances, and she barely had any character at all. She barely did anything. In fact, that was sort of the biggest complaint about Yaz as a character from the fans, was she did nothing. She just was in the background, and much more focus was given to Ryan and Graham, who have previously left. Now, there's more focus on Yaz, I will say, in Season 13, Flux, which, I mean, was a little bit better of a season, I'll say, overall, because at least it was decent to watch. There was an overarching narrative, but again, that season suffered tremendously from just being extremely convoluted to the point where it really didn't make sense either. And it definitely, having binged it all at once, I could understand how an audience maybe watching it 1 episode a week would just, forget about certain things. But having watched it all in a row, there's certain things that don't make sense that, like, they're set up in 1 episode and then it's just completely dropped. Like, this is a rule and we're just not going to follow that rule. We're just over here now. The plot's we've moved on from that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really bad. There was a small point in Flux where they kind of hinted at the fact that Yaz had a thing for the Doctor. When I watched it, to me, it just looked like she, like, missed the Doctor or something. Like, a lot of companions, develop a fondness for the Doctor. If she sees the Doctor as a friend, like, of course she's going to be like, oh, I miss my friend, it only makes sense. And the Doctor is kind of one of the coolest friends you can have, really. So a lot of people, would probably be a little upset that the Doctor wasn't around anymore. But I do remember finding at the time it was a little like, okay, well, she's watching this basically hologram recording that she got from the Doctor. And it's, like, a little weird because, like, she must have seen this before, so she's just watching it on repeat. And I thought it was weird at the time, but I just kind of, pushed it aside as, like, oh, well, she just misses the Doctor. I think this is just supposed to be like, oh, well, she would know what to do, something like that. But in reality, it was supposed to be apparently, like, Yaz has this, like, Yaz has this thing for the Doctor, apparently. Yaz is, like, in love with the Doctor, which is not what I got from that, but okay. I mean, it's the first, like, hint of that being a thing, and it doesn't really play very well because, like, it hasn't been set up at all. That would be a complete jump of a thing to think that was what that was alluding to, but apparently that's what that was alluding to. And then when they talk about it in Eve of the Daleks, it's just like, what? It just comes out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense to me. I didn't see it coming at all. But apparently that's what was happening the whole time. Yaz has had a little bit more agency in the past 2 episodes, I'll say. In Eve of the Daleks and in Flux, she was set up to be, oh, she's spent so much time with the Doctor, so now she's very capable of doing a lot of the things that the Doctor can do. She's capable of working with alien technology to unlock cages and all sorts of things. Like, she just has this knowledge, this arcane knowledge from having spent so much time with the Doctor. The problem is that a lot of this information is just, like, told to us rather than shown to us. So, it really doesn't work in Eve of the Daleks. It's just out of nowhere, and it's also very strange for Doctor Who, because the Doctor's usually a very distant individual. They haven't had like a whole lot of romances in the past. You have the obvious ones with like 9, 10, and Rose, especially. I don't know if you could call 11 and like Amy a romance. I don't really think it was. It was kind of a one-sided from Amy's side of, crushing hard on the Doctor. But it's the same as Martha Jones basically having a crush on the 10th Doctor. But he did have a romance for a while with River Song. Basically this whole convoluted setup of a backwards timeline where River knew everything about him by the time he met her. So, they had already been married from her perspective, but from his perspective, they hadn't been. He was just meeting her for the first time. So the romance kind of happens backwards, and it's eventually revealed that she marries the Doctor, specifically the 11th Doctor. So she's the Doctor's wife. There's a bit of a reference to this when it happens, when she eventually confesses, the Doctor confesses to Yaz in this episode. They make an offhand reference about, like, oh, I'm not a bad date, am I, when they're like on the bottom of the ocean floor, and it's really awkward for a second. And then later on, the Doctor's like, I think, like, if I ever wanted to have a date with somebody, it would be with you because you're one of the greatest people I've ever met, apparently. Which, I mean, this is all just completely out of nowhere. It's just, I don't understand what they're trying to do here. I'm racking my brain for what the point of this plotline is. Like, why does the Doctor need a love interest right now? I mean, it's out of character for the Doctor. They're very difficult to, like, they don't fall in love very often, It just doesn't happen because they know they're going to live longer than them. So it's, like, never going to work. So even though the Doctor sort of falls in love occasionally, it usually takes a lot, and he usually doesn't pursue it at all. So for her to, like, admit something like this very openly is weird, especially given that the 13th Doctor in general, we really don't know that much about her. She's just very chaotic and sort of all over the place and just bouncing from one thing to the next without, like, stopping to think about anything for a second. So to even think that she had apparently stopped for many seconds to think about how she had a thing for Yaz is quite hard to believe, but apparently that's true. So she also, makes an offhand comment about her wife. She's like, yeah, if I chose to have a date with anybody, it would be with you and my wife. It's something like that, and it's just really weird and awkwardly delivered. Like, they just, like, we're like, let's not forget that she is married at this point. But I think the assumption is that River is technically out of the picture at this point. River is dead. The Doctor can no longer meet with River. From the Doctor's perspective, River is technically dead. But yeah, I really don't know what to make of this. It's not like I think they have good chemistry or anything. It's just weird and out of nowhere, and just like, we have to do something with Yaz, I guess. We have to have some sort of development to these two characters' relationships. Let's do something with that, and I guess it'll be a love connection. So after this, like, awkward confession, the Doctor determines that the thing that she's currently doing will probably blow everything up, and they have very little time to get out. The problem is, this thing that she put together, she has to hold it together. If she doesn't hold it together, it won't explode. So initially, she just tells Yaz to, like, run away. It's like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself. And then Ji-hoon shows up out of nowhere. He was just hanging out off camera, I guess. He just shows up, and he's like, I'll do it. And the Doctor's like, I guess that works. And then they leave, and Ji-hoon sacrifices himself, and he dies. So basically, that's what I gleaned of the plot line. It's not a good episode. I mean, it's an okay episode. It's kind of exciting, but it moves too fast, and it doesn't really respect your ability to pay attention to it. It wants you specifically, I think, not to pay attention to it, so that when things don't make sense, like, you just accept that you missed something, I guess. But, I tried really hard to, like, go back and be like, all right, why is this guy in the statue? How did he get in the statue? And the episode just doesn't explain it. Additionally, the Pirate Queen, what she was after. She was after the treasure, but why did she know more than she realistically should have? Why were the Sea Devils underwater building this ship for years and not searching for this keystone, which they knew had to be around? I don't know, but overall, it's better than the previous, the first 2 seasons were absolutely god-awful. Flux was a little bit better, but like I said, I think they've been going more in this direction of let's go really fast through the plot and just have a lot of really convenient things happen that aren't really explained, and then not explain them, but be moving too fast that nobody questions as to why they happen, and people will be like, I think the show's better now, because they don't know what's going on anymore. Unfortunately, I think this will be the final season of the 13th Doctor whenever it starts, and I think Chris Chibnall is also stepping down, and I've heard that Stephen Moffat might come back to revamp the show again. This has been a pretty rough series of Doctor Who. I mean, I'm okay with continuing to watch it because it's like a trash fire at this point. It's just like I like watching how terrible it is. It's just fun to watch something be just awful every single episode sometimes, So that's what that's what I'm doing with my time. Do I have high hopes for the new season? Not at all. It's going to be terrible. I mean, there's the whole twist of the Doctor being the timeless child, which I absolutely hate. I much preferred it when the Doctor was just a crazy old man with a time machine just traveling around space and time. It's much more fun than for him to be some sort of weird supernatural entity from somewhere mysterious that apparently is immortal and important in some way that probably won't ever really get explained. I think the new season will probably be okay, but not good. And I'm looking forward to the season after, I think. But, this episode, it's not good. That's all I have to say about it. I don't know. I don't think I have anything, I can't say it's, absolutely terrible, but, it doesn't make any sense if you stop to think about it. That's kind of the whole show has been at this point, so, am I surprised? Not really. But yeah, I hope this video is, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and, I'd like to do more things like this. I'd like to maybe review more shows, more single episodes. Maybe I'll do the next season of Doctor Who whenever it comes out. And I have some other plans for other more complex videos, I guess, in the future. So I'm going to try to do that. Mostly I'm going to focus, I think, on commentary. I also think that I'm planning on streaming probably on Twitch from now on. If you're interested at all in that, I'm probably going to be moving to Twitch. I've been streaming on YouTube for a little while, and I want to kind of shift gears and switch over to Twitch to see how that goes. So, if you want to continue to watch my streams, you'll probably have to switch over to Twitch, and I might upload the VODs here, but I'm not sure. So, yeah, I guess that's about it. Thanks for watching.